back to the Seriously Don't Do That podcast. Tonight I'm featuring a mug courtesy of Key West. Got to spend some time there last summer, and it was a wonderful time, and every time I see this, it reminds me of the beaches and the cool, laid-back vibe in Key West. Well, good evening, David.
Good evening.
Today's DDT, I guess I should say this evening's DDT, is don't hire salespeople. And for those of you that don't know what a DDT is, it's a don't do that. So tonight we're going to talk about why you shouldn't hire salespeople.
Well, isn't that kind of counterintuitive? If I want to grow my business, why shouldn't I hire a salesperson?
Well, David, you may not be ready for salespeople. A lot of companies try to throw people at a problem, and we know from our study of the Industrial Revolution that throwing people at a problem doesn't solve it. And even though we're doing it in our modern age, it still doesn't solve the problem. And for many businesses, it's that they just don't understand their target market, the pain or challenge that they're solving for their target market, the type of companies that are in their target market, or even the personas, the people that actually buy the solution or services that they sell. So I say they aren't ready because there are no leads generated. There's no activity. It makes it very, very difficult for a salesperson to go out and find these people if you haven't invested the time and effort to generate what I like to call expressions of interest. I think about a company that I worked with a couple of years ago. Want to give a shout out to my friend Matt Gutierrez. You'll see his link in the podcast notes. But Matt came to work for me, and we worked for a company that did exactly what I'm talking about, threw a lot of people at the problem. And unfortunately, Matt's job was to go out and find people and schedule calls with them for me as a salesperson and some of my colleagues to talk with. But there was no marketing, there was no website to speak of, and unfortunately, there was no leads. Matt and I are still great friends today, but those 6 months were some of the hardest of our lives.
So how do I know when I'm ready for salespeople or for more salespeople?
Well, David, that's a great question, and it's going to differ depending on the company that you're working with. You learn the business and you learn there are certain benchmarks. I would always encourage people to look at similar companies and understand how many leads or expressions of interest they need to make a sale. And at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. That's sort of a jaded view of sales, but you know that you have to generate a certain number of interest, which generate a certain number of leads, which eventually generate sales pipeline and obviously sold deals.
So we've used the term salespeople, but can you share a little bit more of what kind of profit you should be targeting? Or profile?
Yeah, we always want to be targeting profit, David, so you are exactly right about that. You're way ahead of your time, man. But we're talking here about the profile of the salespeople we want to target. I always say I like to start with somebody that's a listener. There's a misconception in sales that salespeople are great talkers, but the great salespeople are great listeners. And when you do get to the point where you do want to hire salespeople, and that you're ready to do that, you want to find a listener. You want to find somebody that's process driven, meaning that they will be able to follow your sales process. And then if you're a small company, you want somebody that has an entrepreneurial mindset just like you in founding your company. I've found using personality testing. Now I'm not talking about very intense personality testing, but using something like a DISC assessment to assess how you can work with the person and what their strengths are will be very helpful in finding the right kind of salesperson for your organization.
You're going to make some people mad with this one. What would you say about that?
Well, I wrote an article around this, and I had a lot of recruiters that were pretty upset with me. I love recruiters. Actually want to do a shout out to 3 of my most favorite recruiters. David Shieldhouse, here's looking at you, man, Alan Michael, and Jamie Shore. These are good guys, and they can really help you. And a great recruiter can be like a great real estate agent. They can really help you with your business. But people misunderstood that I was telling companies never to hire salespeople, and that's not the case. What I was saying is you need to put your salespeople in the opportunity to succeed, meaning you've got to have some leads, you've got to have a market that they can work with and that they can close sales. Well, David, we've come to an end of another podcast, and I appreciate you helping me out and keeping me straight. And I love the profit motive. I think we might want to make a promo out of that. But I do want to encourage our listeners to come back and see us again on Seriously Don't Do That podcast, and to be well and grow. Be sure to join us next week when we'll talk about why you shouldn't look to your biggest competitor when you're hiring sales and marketing.